On today's show, we talk about Pat Flynn and retail crowdfunding campaigns.
Crowdfund Genius Take 1.
I'm ZacBob, founder of Crowdfund Genius. I'm the show host for Crowdfund Genius Podcast on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. So make sure you check that out. We also have Crowdfunding Comebacks, which is another podcast that we do on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. So if you get a chance, make sure you tweet at us, especially thank you for joining us via Periscope, all you people, thank you. If you have a crowdfunding question, make sure you send it to us on Twitter at Crowdfund Genius. We'll go ahead and feature your Twitter handle and give you a shout out on the show, and we'll try to answer your question to the best of our ability. So let's go ahead and kick it off with our very first question. Brandon, go.
At Cicinero asks, what crowdfunding platform is the best for a product directed to Latino families in the U.S.?
What crowdfunding platform is best directed at Latino families in the U.S.? First thing that I would ask you at Cicinero here, first thing I would say is, do you have an email list? Because if you're building an email list, that should be able to answer your question. If you're building a product that's for Latino families, you're probably adding Latinos onto your email list. And if you have an email list, send them an email. Simple answer right there. Send them an email, ask them. Ask them if they're familiar with Kickstarter. Ask them if they're familiar with Indiegogo. Ask them what platform they are familiar with. And you can fill out a Survey Monkey for free. Surveymonkey.com, get a survey built up, send it to them, offer them incentive to actually fill it out. Maybe it's a coaching call, maybe it's a raffle to win a chance at winning your product. Whatever it is, contact your email list. Ask them what they're familiar with. And if they're not familiar with any of the platforms, do a screen capture. We had to do this recently for a client where his audience was less familiar with crowdfunding and less familiar with Kickstarter. And what we did is we did a screen capture, one with the creator actually talking to the audience, talking to his fans, saying, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm running a Kickstarter campaign. I really need your support, come back us. We take credit cards and this is how you do it. We even pointed out that Kickstarter and Indiegogo is secure with the HTTPS on our screen capture from our computer. So do a screen capture video, walk through the entire process of how to put your card into Kickstarter, how to put your credit card information into Indiegogo. Again, point out that it's secure. Show them exactly how to back your campaign. Put that out through all your social media channels. Put that out several times across your email list before the launch and during your crowdfunding campaigns. Now, best crowdfunding platform for a product, in my opinion, depending on the product, I would say Kickstarter, just because they got enormous views. They dominate the search when it comes to Google. So I would recommend Kickstarter for you and for Latino families across the U.S. All right, second question. Brandon, go.
At Life Out of the Box asks, have you ever worked with retail crowdfunding campaigns before? How successful are these versus tech campaigns? By the way, you guys rock.
We do rock. As far as have we ever worked with a retail crowdfunding campaign? Yes. I mean, there's a lot of retail crowdfunding campaigns. There's a lot of very successful retail crowdfunding campaigns. I don't know what your measuring stick for success is, but I know that I can tell you there's retail campaigns that are doing in the millions. There's retail campaigns that I've worked with or talked with. There's Bomber Barrel. Bomber Barrel, it's a nylon duffel bag. They pulled over $400,000 in crowdfunding. It's really the key is just to run a campaign, use those backers to run a second campaign, and just keep doing that process. Each time you run a campaign, Kickstarter, I kind of consider Kickstarter and Indiegogo marketing platforms as well, because they bring in new audience members or bring in new potential customers or new customers to your campaign. So every time you run a campaign, you're getting new customers. So I would definitely, if you have a retail product and you're looking to run a crowdfunding campaign, do it. All right, let's go to our third and final question, and then we'll try to answer some questions via Periscope. So remember, if you're watching us on YouTube and not Periscope, check us out on Periscope. You never know when we're going to go live with Crowdfund Genius Live. Next question.
Joshua Rivers pointed out from Pat Flynns Podcast, #AskPat, episode 455. What crowdfunding platform should I use?
All right, ask Pat. Pat Flynn, he's a big guy, right? Very, very, very influential when it comes to podcasting, even in the business space. And if you don't know who Pat Flynn is, check him out, especially his podcast, #AskPat. If you know who Pat Flynn is, give us some hearts. Let us know, let us know that you know who Pat Flynn is as well. First, I want to say we're going to try to elaborate a little bit more on his answer, because his answer was wonderful on episode 455 of Ask Pat. So we're going to kind of just elaborate a little bit more. We're in the crowdfunding space, whereas Pat is not in the crowdfunding space. So we can maybe answer this question and just give a little bit more detail-oriented answers. So first off, I want to say that Pat did point out that if you run a campaign, well, first it's Kit. I believe it was Kit from episode 455. We had to listen to the episode, dissect it a little bit, and kind of figure out how we're going to go about answering this question. So this question wasn't on the fly. We did do a little bit of thinking about 30 minutes ago as we listened to the episode into this question. And Kit from illustrativecoach.com is the one that asked this question. Now, I don't know, I didn't check out Illustrative Coach, so I'm sorry, but I don't know exactly what kind of business it is or what kind of crowdfunding platform you're looking for. But if you're in the illustrative business, which I'm assuming like a comic book or some kind of graphic design or something like that, the creative space is pretty matched when it comes to Indiegogo and when it comes to Kickstarter. A lot of people kind of look at Indiegogo as a tech for crowdfunding for tech, mainly I guess maybe because it's in Silicon Valley or it's located, in San Francisco. But I would recommend Kickstarter just because of the views that you get. Now, when it comes to Indiegogo and Kickstarter, Pat pointed out that you're going to lose a percentage with any crowdfunding campaign, and that is true. And that percentage, to be exact, is 2.5% to credit card transaction fees on Indiegogo and on Kickstarter, and another 5% for the actual crowdfunding platform. Pat pointed out that there's a few drawbacks when it comes to running a crowdfunding campaign. He elaborated a little bit on the manufacturing, that how if you run a campaign, after your campaign, it kind of turns more into hustling to fulfill those reward orders, dealing with manufacturers, and a few months after, that's usually what you're trying to work with and trying to deal with, and that's what a lot of your time is focused on. Another drawback I'd like to point out is work. All right, a crowdfunding campaign is not easy. Our crowdfunding game plan is laid out into 8 weeks, and it's 40-hour weeks that you have to actually go through to accomplish what we've laid out for you in the game plan to have a huge, successful crowdfunding campaign. It is a lot of work when it comes to running a crowdfunding campaign. It usually has teams of people that run a crowdfunding campaign. If you've seen Hacking Kickstarter by Tim Ferriss, another great post, if you know about it, give us some hearts. But if you've seen Hacking Kickstarter by Tim Ferriss, he even points out that they used VAs, virtual assistants, to help them run their crowdfunding campaign for Soma. Another thing is that if you fail, it's a 90% fail rate when it comes to running a crowdfunding campaign for first timers, just for first timers. Now, if you run a crowdfunding campaign a second time, it increases greatly to around 44%. So if you fail, try again. It's absolutely free to run a crowdfunding campaign. It costs you nothing but the time and effort that you're going to put into it, and you're going to learn from the first one. And I guarantee you, you're going to get a few backers or a few more customers that you didn't have when you ran that first campaign. And they're going to come back. They're going to want to back because they already paid for it once. They'll probably pay for it a second time with a greater odds of success if you run a second crowdfunding campaign. So I hope that answers your question a little bit there, Kit. And make sure you check us out if you have any more crowdfunding questions. Pat Flynn, if you have any crowdfunding questions, make sure you send us a tweet to @CrowdFundGenius. We're going to end the show today with one. Check us out on YouTube. This video will be uploaded shortly. We also upload the audio to our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. And we're going to end with a question of the day. Here's our question right here. You might have seen it up behind me. How many of you listeners have run a crowdfunding campaign before? Whether it's successful, whether it failed, it doesn't matter. Leave your answer in the comments and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, share, tell your friends, do all of that. Thank you for joining us. Happy crowdfunding. ZacBob out.